Under this video that Ben Shapiro put up, he's talking about the evil revolutionary left cheering on murder. And someone has the app where you can still see dislikes, and this video has 5,000 likes and I think 25 or 30,000 dislikes. The comments are like this: I just realized your entire business model requires us normal people to hate each other. I'm not buying this left versus right shit anymore, Ben. I want healthcare for my family. Every comment, I know it's the internet, but it's about rich people controlling the system and people being mad about it. And even, I know the online said this, but even in my personal life, I've seen people who are very civility based and decorum and all that kind of stuff just say they don't care about what happened. They really don't have any strong feelings. They feel indifferent because with healthcare and in insurance companies, in particular, insurance companies don't provide a service to people. They're really a blockage for many people. And there's so many stories. I think most individuals have had horror stories with healthcare. So many people relate on not liking the healthcare system very much, and that causes them to feel very indifferent when something like this happens.
The UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, he was, of course, on Wednesday, and there are some pretty deep ramifications for American society and all this. We'll get to that in a moment. First, time is running out. Daily Wire Plus is 50%. The United Health executive, Brian Thompson, was shot to death on the streets of New York. Authorities are still searching for the suspect at this point, according to the Wall Street Journal. Police are combing New York City for the suspect who used a Sharpie to write "deny, defend, and depose" on cartridges that are believed to have come out of his gun when it jammed, according to law enforcement officials. Some of those words are commonly associated with tactics insurers use to avoid paying claims. Investigators believe that the suspect may be staying or may have stayed at a hostel on Manhattan's Upper West Side. The NYPD hasn't publicly identified the person who ambushed Brian Thompson. However, they have released an image of the person, quote unquote, wanted for questioning.
By the way, the image was completely fake. It was not the person at all. So NYPD is probably going to get sued by that guy. And this happens a lot when news agencies post about breaking news because everyone needs to be first to the punch. Look at this guy. This might be the supposed suspect. So now they might get sued. And now also NYPD, they took forever to find a backpack nearby the crime scene. And the backpack was filled with Monopoly money. The words written on the casings were, like Ben Shapiro just said, also the title of a book that talks about health insurance companies denying people coverage. And now I'm pretty sure this person has been reported to have escaped New York City. NYPD thinks this person is now out of New York City, so we don't know where this person is. They can be literally anywhere, and New York's not that far from anyone on the East Coast if you're in the Northeast. So he can be in any state. He could be from a different country. We don't know. Like, we don't know who this guy is. But this has been the first guy in a long time that's just gotten away from the law enforcement after committing such a, an assassination or a mass shooting or something like that. This guy got away. And now there's a bunch of lore being built up on the internet on who this guy is. It's been a crazy ride.
They released his face. He's smiling and wearing a hood in one of the photos as he appears to lean on a counter. Authorities are offering up a reward of up to 10 grand for information leading to an arrest.
And I saw another thing where they almost recreated the face with AI. And I'm like, yeah, dude, nothing can go wrong with recreating a face from like a really bad security footage with artificial intelligence. Nothing can go wrong with that. AI is never wrong. There's no way they reconstruct the face and make it look like someone else. It's a great idea to use AI for law enforcement. I love that we're heading that direction.
In the case, the real question in all of this is how Americans respond. So Taylor Lorenz, we talked about her yesterday. She is a psychotic former reporter for the Washington Post and the New York Times. She's totally insane. She was insane on COVID. She was insane when it came to the supposed predations of people on the right who ought to, she said, be shut out of media and particularly social media. Well, now she is full-scale rallying in favor of the murderer. So she tweeted yesterday on Blue Sky, which is a weird left-wing echo chamber form of Twitter. There was a post put out by Blue Cross Blue Shield all about whether it was going to pay for anesthesia under its healthcare coverage. And
to be real, bro, on my For You page, it's just people talking about eugenics and screaming the N-word and screaming different racial slurs and talking about conspiracy theories on X. So talking about Blue Sky as if that's the echo chamber is wild because X.com is a violent place. It's a scary place to be at. 4chan, dude. 4chan pretty much took over a mainstream news network. I think it really just gives you, like I said before, every time you go on X, you get repeated concussions. You get CTE just from going on that website.
She then tweeted out, quote, "And people wonder why we want these executives dead." So openly cheering the death of Brian Thompson. That wasn't her only post. Somebody put out a statement saying, quote, legislation idea, healthcare executives and their families must be on the cheapest plan their company offers, and they aren't allowed to seek other care. And she wrote in all capital letters, endorse. Then she put out a post that showed a graphic.
Wait, is this really a crazy tweet, though? This one? The idea that health insurers should have to... People say this about Congress, too. Legislation idea, healthcare executives and their families must be on the cheapest plan their company offers, and they are not allowed to seek other care. It's kind of like when they tell lawmakers, you should need to live on the minimum wage until you increase it and see how you like it. I don't really think that's much of a radical thing to say. People have been saying that cliche for literally years and years and years.
She put out a post that showed a graphic of a happy star, like a star with a happy face and balloons, and the caption CEO down. And she wrote, woke up to see this spammed in my group chats. And she said, I am not alone, that other people were doing the same thing. Then she reposted a post from left-wing agitator Ken Klippenstein saying, today we remember the legacy of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And what exactly was that legacy? The claim denial rates by insurance companies. And of course, it's not just Taylor Lorenz. Socialist Nathan Robinson, a complete useless leech on the ass of society, posted himself, quote, live your life in such a way that people will be sad when you die. That was above a screen cap of a New York Times headline that said, torrent of hate for health insurance industry follows CEO's killing. That piece.
The big issue here with people who are talking about others who are indifferent about this, I don't think you should ever advocate for violence or murder, obviously. But the reason people don't usually care about this at all, that much, very much, even people who are not very political are looking at this like whatever. I understand, because everyone has a story about why they got denied coverage, or when they got denied coverage, or when their family member got denied coverage. And healthcare insurance companies in America, the idea we have a for-profit system that's gatekeeping healthcare from people, and I know the argument is they're doing risk management, but for-profit health insurance has made America become the least efficient healthcare model in the first world. Like, it's by far the least efficient model per dollar and has the worst outcomes. We have the worst life, quality of life, and also life expectancy rate. And people, when they see this happen, the guy who got, whatted, he also was under investigation by a DOJ probe for suspected insider trading. So these people are profiting millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars off of providing no service except managing risk, quote unquote. And it's like, yeah, other countries do a very different model of healthcare. We don't need to do this in America. We can have a much better model. Medical bankruptcy is the number one cause of bankruptcy. And I see people talking about like, oh, the American healthcare is not that bad. Yeah, it's not that bad compared to a super poor country. But with America, all the stuff we consume and the environmental waste we produce and the economic production we have, we should have better healthcare. For all people in America. There's no reason these smaller countries with less GDP per capita can provide this service to people while spending half as much per capita, and we can't. That's just like a fairy tale. And people are so locked into this idea that things need to be this way in America. And no one's going to talk about the silent deaths that are happening as a result of healthcare. The hundreds of thousands of silent deaths that happen per year because someone cannot get adequate care, because they don't have care on a regular basis, because they can't afford it, and because they couldn't find they had cancer. And then when they did find they had cancer, it was too late, and they couldn't afford cancer treatments. It's not only like a 1 or 2 or 3 tier or 4 tier system. It's not even just about that. It's also about preventative care. Not everyone's going to see the best cancer specialist, but if we have everyone have a basic standard of healthcare, they will be healthier in general. And also the screenings that are done will catch things like cancer much earlier in the process when it's much more manageable. And this system that we currently have directly stands in the way of making costs go down. Our drug prices are super high because of the profit motive. The profit motive has infiltrated our healthcare far too much. And the ACA is just like a Band-Aid on that situation. Although it provided 40 million more people with healthcare, it's still a Band-Aid solution. We need to go further. And there's a reason people really don't care about this as much as they typically would. Please drop a like on the stream. Hit subscribe.
None of this stopped social media commentators from leaping to conclusions and showing a blatant lack of sympathy over the death of a man who is a husband and father of 2 children. Thoughts and deductibles to the family, read one comment underneath a video of the shooting posted online by CNN. Unfortunately, my condolences are out of network.
Bro, okay. When it comes to dark humor, I know the right wing has been defending Tony Hinchcliffe and Andrew Schultz. That's an objectively the idea that I want to offer my condolences, but sadly it's out of network, or the meme that said you can't afford your deductible, and it's just like it's objectively funny dark gallow humor. So if you want to have like that kind of humor, you can't have it with both sides where you're allowed to make fun of a bunch of different countries like Puerto Rico being garbage after everything they've suffered, or Haiti or whatever. And then when a healthcare CEO dies, people make jokes about it on the internet. You have to be for edgy comedy in every situation. Some of the jokes were clever jokes, like when it comes to how healthcare is managed in America.
TikTok user wrote, quote, "I'm an ER nurse, and the things I've seen dying patients get denied for by insurance, it makes me physically sick. I just can't feel sympathy for him because of all those patients and their families." And these sorts of messages were incredibly common across the internet. We discussed yesterday a Columbia professor who wrote something very similar. Unfortunately, bubbling under the surface of all this is something very serious, really serious. What is that serious thing? The revolutionary left is creeping into the mainstream. Yesterday we talked about liberals versus the left. Liberals are people who disagree with me on public policy, but aren't in favor of, the murder of their opponents. The left is a different thing. The shooting of Thompson has unleashed a wave of evil from members of the left. Thompson was not a criminal. He wasn't even an advocate of death, the way, for example, abortion or euthanasia advocates are. And by the way, murdering an
abortion and euthanasia. Bro, the idea that abortion is going to be this political football for conservatives to avoid any moral conversation in the real world just for eternity cannot stand. And also having the right to die if you have a terminal illness and you're guaranteed to be dying already. The right to end your life when you already are in pain. I've seen so many people in pain at the end of their life, and they're forced to be in hospice for 2 weeks screaming in pain. Like, Ben Shapiro's emotional bullshit does not qualify as arguments or principles or morality or anything. The idea that we're talking about healthcare in America and the healthcare CEO who was an insider trader, and also the healthcare system where we've seen many of our family members have these illnesses and be rejected by insurance companies. We've seen people go to the ER for heart attacks and insurance companies disagree that it was actually necessary. Many people have died slow and painful deaths because of health insurance companies denying people care. And I don't blame this one CEO for that system being a thing. And I do not condone what happened. But you need to understand why there's so much apathy and indifference among the general public in America. It's because they don't see this as a noble business. They don't see it as a noble venture. They see it as something very destructive that is draining from people, that is a leech, that's a middleman between you and your doctor, that takes profits from what should be a shared community risk pool where we support each other and our ability to get healthcare for when some people do get sick. That's the big issue here. The rejection that there's any reason the public feels this way. And we talked about the comments under this video, talking about Ben Shapiro's politics putting every working class person against each other, every person who's not rich against each other. I've heard from conservatives, I've heard from liberals who are suburban liberals who typically would be like, oh, this is terrible. I can't see this. It's so abhorrent, because they all have stories dealing with this system and no one will reform it in a serious way. So that's why across the ideological spectrum, and Ben Shapiro's blaming this on the revolutionary left, whatever the revolutionary left is. What is it? Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders and also Bernie Sanders? Is that the revolutionary left that has all this power to make the right wing in America mad about healthcare and to make the centrists mad about healthcare and to make Democrats mad about healthcare? Is that the revolutionary left that just now made Americans mad when all power is concentrated in one area? Is that the revolutionary left that makes it an issue for people that we have such high levels of inequality in our country that causes oligarchs to take over? Is that the revolutionary left's fault?
Abortionist or an advocate of euthanasia would be unjustifiable morally in a democratic system. Brian Thompson's great sin, according to these people, is that he was the head of a company that exists within a mixed private-public healthcare framework, and that he did his job, because that's how health insurance actually works. Some things are covered and some things are not. And you may not like the application of the coverage, and it may be bad.
We don't have a mixed public-private system. We have a system where we have Medicaid for really poor people. We have Medicare for really old people. And then we have subsidies where the government pays private companies in order to force them to give insurance to us poor people that don't deserve it. The government needs to subsidize the Obamacare facilitated market, the right-wing healthcare solution, the Affordable Care Act, It's great that we have it versus not having it. The Affordable Care Act and Patient Protection Act was very good and still is very good. And if it was removed, it would be catastrophic for so many Americans. But still,
that is not an excuse for murder. But for the left, if you hate the system, you are morally justified in murdering anyone who acts within the system. That means that
no one is saying that. If you want to take 5 Twitter replies and represent that for the entire left, then you're a child and you shouldn't be talking about politics. If you want to have a real conversation about why the general public feels a certain way, cool. But if I want to go pick out random right-wingers on Twitter, they're talking about the white replacement theory and how we need to make sure that we maintain our racial purity in America. So I don't, and also they don't like Ben Shapiro. They don't like Jewish people either. So if we want to use the outliers from both sides, at least the revolutionary far left is talking about this. I'd rather them talk about healthcare and healthcare reform than talk about literal just eugenics. And that's, if you want to cherry pick comments on Twitter, we can play that game all day, but I'd rather talk about what real Americans are actually experiencing and feeling.
If, like one Bernie Sanders follower did, you believe that private healthcare kills Americans, you can go around murdering Congress people. I know we buried that one. The media pretended it never happened. Steve Scalise is still limping today because he was nearly shot to death by a Bernie.
People are saying they are indifferent because the system does not function well. And if you keep on denying healthcare and you make millions of dollars in profits from doing this, from providing no service to people, because no one looks at their healthcare and thinks, wow, they're doing something good for me. They're protecting me. They think, I hope my healthcare insurance covers this. And when they do, then it's just a relief. It's never like a huge benefit. They're not saying you can go around and just kill people, but they're saying if you're unwilling to change systems that people are mad about for a long time, then eventually people are going to get mad to the point where, and you could look at any revolution, where revolutionary action happens. And I disagree with revolutionary action. I want the system to change properly, and I want to reform the current system to suit the times. And I want America to be a modern country that has a universal healthcare system, whether single payer, multi-payer, whatever combination of a public option, of Medicare, Medicare Advantage, whatever you want to do, we should be covering all people in America. We have an archaic version of healthcare in America where we're burning money constantly, and also our life expectancy rate is like 5 years lower than any other country in the G7.